Soccer Dad Pod time. We are back. Another episode. Speaking with a true,
this guy,
kind of a legend.
yeah,
Not kind of is.
he is in the college ranks for sure, and I can't wait to talk to him. There's so many little things that he's been a part of over these last 25 years that I can't wait to ask him about.
Well, this is a shout out to our friend Mr. Rensing, SLU High, class of 93, Michigan State head coach. We were down in, I think it was GA last year. I was, and went in for happy hour, and he introduced me to our guest today. Dude brought his dog into the bar, oysters, beers. I'm like, man,
Love it.
it's my kind of guy.
Yeah.
Coming in here with a little classic rock, feels like it has been a Marshall Tucker kind of day. Just kind of easy. I didn't want to think much today.
Yeah.
You ever have those days where like input output days and you're just like, I don't want to do either?
Yeah, that was mostly last week for me. Yeah.
Oh man, Soccer Dad Pod, really right out of the gate. I just want to thank everybody for listening and continuing to support the show. The easiest thing you can do to help us out is just send it to a friend. Subscribe, send it to a friend, turn them on to it, and we'll keep these stories coming. We really appreciate all the support. Last couple episodes, we've been all over the board, but the most recent one, we had the recruiting director, associate head coach from Bowling Green University, Division I Bowling Green University, Gonzalo Carranza. No, he is not Irish. Born in Argentina, raised in Brazil, landed here to play the game, and now he's coaching. Just a really fun story, just a unique perspective as to how they look, what they look for in a program. One of those programs that is heavy local, heavy domestic as well. Tells a story also about turning over every stone, which includes a Friday Night Lights high school game.
Oh, yeah.
To put pen to paper, sign the kid. Just fun, just a fun one. A lot of things going on in the world of news/sports. We're gonna roll straight in here because as soon as our guest dials in, we're gonna jump straight into our conversation with him. So, without further ado, what you got, Zach?
I just have to bring up the news that came out on Saturday night. I was at the game for City. It was the last home game, and they start off with a video montage of Berkey and his saves and all the great things he's done for the city. And everybody's like, oh, this is his, swan song video. It's what it looked like. And then it showed him with a pen in his hand signing his name to a contract extension. The place went crazy, even though it wasn't full because it was raining buckets. But it shows that guy still has pull within this fan base, even though the true soccer people might say, well, we should spend that money on somebody else or get, I'm open to those discussions. And I kind of wanted to start that with you because I know you and I have a little bit of a differing opinion on that. But
well, I'm more in line with Bertrand on this one. Look, Berkey's great goalie. But if we're going to look at what we need to do moving forward as opposed to what has happened the last 3 years, I want to spend more money 80 yards, 90 yards further up the field.
Agreed. Yeah.
I don't know the details of the deal. I don't know whether it makes sense, doesn't make sense, etc. But you can't hate on the fact that you have Roman Berkey back. I just want to see more up front.
Well, do you think this is a Diego move to kind of keep the fans placated until they find that new sporting director, or is this an opportunity for him to say, hey, I could maybe be or Hack or somebody? I just feel like the timing of it was just really, really serendipitous for what's been going on. Yeah,
well, last game of the season, you're out of the playoffs. You've been out for a while. There are no new cups. There's no real enthusiasm per se.
Yeah.
It's been a rough 60 days minimum. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to send everybody out of the stadium on the finale, Yeah, you make him excited because it was produced really well. I saw the video and everything. Like, they do those things
very well,
better than anybody.
Yeah, they pull on the emotional strings and all that, and I think it went over very, very well. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a solid B+.
Yeah.
And that is a sliding. That grade can change based upon the next few signings.
Yeah.
What I wanted to talk about is totally. You're not going to guess where I'm going with this, but you ever seen the Thomas Crown Affair?
Yeah. Pierce Brosnan and Catherine Zeta-Jones.
So did you hear about the robbery at the Louvre?
Yeah.
Middle of the day.
Yep.
Right after they open.
Quite brazen.
4 dudes, lift truck, grinder, cut open a window at the Louvre, go inside, bash open, and leave with
priceless French.
Yeah, from
jewels.
the Napoleon families.
Yeah.
In the middle of the morning.
They took 7 minutes. 7 minutes.
I love it.
To pull it off.
Yeah, look it up. That's great. Our guests here, we're going to jump right on here. 2 seconds.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
How we doing, man?
All good, all good.
Coach Lenahan, thank you for joining us. We're rolling here. I was saying at the intro here that you and I were introduced by a mutual friend of ours, Mr. Damon Rensing, down in Florida. Is that home now, or is that just kind of pit stop?
Oh, yeah, I come back in here between here and Ocean City, New Jersey. So kind of still sorting out. I sold my house in Evanston. Still pop back to Evanston every once in a while, but it's been almost 5 years. I'm retired now, but I'm just kind of figuring out what to do when I grow up, kind of thing, So we'll see. So obviously this week when it's 80 degrees and you're golfing and you're still in summer mode, I'm thinking back. I heard it's really nice though back in the Midwest, but usually this is the week that everything turns. As Gordon Lightfoot said, the winds of November come early, right about this time. So thinking back to times on the lake there at Northwestern, I think it was right around October 20th when, everything went to hell.
Yeah. No, man, I lived up there for 8 years myself, primarily on the north side, a little bit in Humboldt Park. And you're right. By October 15th, once all the stores have all their pumpkin spice and everything out, usually the weather is shit. And it gets worse from there.
Yeah, I mean, we had a game against Wisconsin the one year that it was 0-0 in the 70th minute, and there was a foot of snow on the ground. So we just decided to take the draw and get out of there. I'm like, come on. Like, if it was an NCAA tournament game, that's one thing, but it was like, at the end of the year. But that's October. It was like October 29th.
Yeah.
So we're not too far away from that. But, everything I looked at, the weather looks, still nice now. So it's one of those college seasons where I think, I've had really good weather.
Well, Coach, I want to kind of walk our listeners back in time a little bit so that we can set the table. I'll start with a little bit of statistic from the finish line area, and that is, all of the work that you've put in ended up resulting in over 300 wins, countless tournament appearances, on and on and on and on. But you started somewhere. And you referenced earlier that you're from the Northeast. Can you give us a little bit of a bio as far as hometown, introduction into the game, where you started playing, where you kind of kicked this thing off?
Yeah, my path was a little bit different in terms of, we lived in Philadelphia, and then my family moved to New Jersey, and we happened to move it was a house on the end of a dead-end street that backed up. The fence of our backyard fence was the high school. So at 12 years old, I would just jump the fence of the high school and basically use all their facilities as my backyard. The closest field to me was the soccer field. And so I would go out there and, just run around, figure it out. But then the, high school team started practicing and just kind of watched that. And then, I was starting junior high soon and just started playing, went out for the team in junior high, not really having ever played before. And, I was, played for high school. Now, the interesting thing, too, is I never started a game in high school. And, this one thing that some guys get, sometimes they get it at 12, 13, 14, this thing called puberty.
Heard of it, yeah.
I didn't get it till like 18. All right. So, my magic for soccer really didn't happen until I got to college. I played Division III at Stockton University in New Jersey. And, it was kind of funny when it was over. I played my last game my senior year. I'm like, no. This can't be over. I just got tall. You know what I mean? Like I just figured this out. This can't be the end of it. And again, the way the world works, and like even moving, we moved one house to the other side instead of the dead end house. I don't know that I ever find soccer, but I get a job out of college. I was a computer science major. I get a job working for the Federal Aviation Administration in their IT world, which happens to be 10 minutes from my alma mater. And so I would start helping out, which was basically, me showing up with my boots and jumping into their training, and then the next year I became an assistant coach. I got paid $1,000. And then 3 years later, I became the head coach. And, but the good news is my salary tripled when I became the head coach.
Wow.
So I became the head coach for $3,000 a year. But luckily I had a really good, well-paying job, that was sustaining me. But I can tell you my worst day as a coach is better than my best day as a, software engineer. And, there was no way I was ever going to be any good at that. I did my job, but there was no way I was ever going to be good at it in terms of climbing the corporate ladder. And fortunately, I took over a program at Stockton, my alma mater, that was 2-15, and we built that into a Division III power. And from there, I was able to get the Lafayette job, in Eastern Pennsylvania in the Patriot League. And no more IT.
Well, let's go back to maybe the region and kind of the engagement with the game, because obviously Jersey in particular, if we're talking about hotbeds, that's one. Like historically in the United States, here in St. Louis, we have that history. It's probably a 2-horse race for the most part. Jersey,
yeah,
Kearney.
And that's mostly North Jersey. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's where it was a little bit more established from the immigrants coming into Kearney, the Scots,
yep.
With the Mayolas and the that whole group there at the same time, John Harks, that group. South Jersey, at that time we were thought of as like farm country. But basically, we're a suburb of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So my question to you then is, who was the mentor? Maybe who was the driver, or was this kind of self-motivation just through your own experience? Blooming late, and you didn't want to leave the game, or was there somebody like, hey, come with me, let me show you the ropes?
No, it was pretty much figuring. Obviously everybody has influences, not so much in the soccer world, but you're influenced by different people who shape, who you eventually become. I had a high school friend, who was like New Jersey Player of the Year, and from the South, that was very rare, because most of he had gotten killed our senior year in a car accident. So his memory definitely fueled my, drive to move forward as a player, and always kind of kept him in the back of my mind as the journey kind of continued. So I have a really I read it anytime I do a leadership thing, or some of us were just destined for greatness from day one, and if you wrote what they wrote in my yearbook, you would understand that. So my teammate wrote in my yearbook, Mike Chance, he wrote, "Dear Tim, you can get yourself into any kind of position you want as long as it doesn't involve soccer. Good luck, Tim. Good luck, Tim. You'll need some." That's what somebody actually wrote in my high school yearbook. Okay. So I can tell you, I've read that page in my yearbook over the course of the, 40 plus years of soccer at least 5,000 times, whether it was a big win or a big loss, one to just reflect on the journey, and two to say, screw you, Mike Chance. Guess what?
So let me
We did
ask.
okay.
Yeah, let me ask you a follow up to that point, because I just had this picture of when we all got our senior yearbooks, taking them around to our friends and having them sign it. Did you instantly read that from Mike, or was it?
I can't quite recall that, but yeah, I probably did, and it was like, like you're my friend and my teammate. You know what I mean? Like, but that gives you an idea how far the journey has come.
Well,
but the one thing he was right about, and that was like he said, "Good luck, Tim. You'll need some."
Yeah.
And I consider myself to be extremely lucky, and all the things that happen to make your journey possible. There's a huge amount of luck in that. Like I said, moved in one house, or get a job at Campbell Soup is a big company in South Jersey. I had interviewed there for an IT job. That's an hour away from where I was. That's closer to where I grew up. But I get a job 10 minutes from, all these
really
lucky things happen. But I don't know that, my college coach, was made the Hall of Fame at my college. And it was really nice for me that my college coach, Walt Purchell, came back. He was 86 years old, but, he came back to, and again, you just learn a little bit from everybody. You pick up a little bit, but I'm not sure anybody in this, particularly in the soccer world, I always think that, there's soccer people who coach, and then there's coaches who find their sport. And I just think I was a coach who found my sport, if you know what I mean. Like,
yeah. We've had your story reminds me of a local coach here in St. Louis, Mr. Vitello, who
Greg Vitello.
He worked on the the docks in Chicago, and then got a teaching job at a local high school here in St. Louis, and became the soccer coach. And he's one of the most winningest high school soccer coaches in the history of the sport. His son is Tony Vitello, who is the head coach at University of Tennessee men's baseball, and is probably going to be going to the Giants after this season. But I think he was more of the coach who found soccer. Yeah. And your story sounds like that. But Coach Lenahan, looking at your career, and we've only gotten to Stockton, really. We haven't even gotten to Lafayette or to Northwestern, where you spent the majority of your career. But you took a 2-15 team at Stockton and turned them into, as you used the term yourself, a powerhouse in a very short time. I mean, we're not talking the first season necessarily, but within the first 3 seasons, and now you're in the Hall of Fame at your alma mater. So was it that easy for you to just figure out how to make these guys work together and build a team? Like, how did you start putting those pieces together?
Well, interestingly enough, I took over the team, and it was a lot of the guys I knew as the assistant coach.
Right.
Right. And they turned their game up for me. You know what I mean? Like and everybody back east calls me Lenny for Lenahan, right? Lenny, we got you, Lenny. And we had a great year. We went 9-5-2 my first year. Made the ECACs, which is like the NIT. You don't get to the NCAA tour. Beat College of New Jersey, Trenton State. It was, whatever. We lost like 7-0 to them the year before, and beat them. And it was a great year. And so now, because I compare coaching to golf. Okay. Just when you think you have it all figured out, you don't. Okay. So the one day you go and hit 82 or whatever, and you're just like, oh, my game's on fire now. And then the next day you hit 107, right? So that's what coaching is. And I realized after the next 2 years, where we kind of went 500 or so, that I needed better players, right? I could coach, you can only do the overachieving, win one for the Gipper, run through brick walls, so often. and we needed to get better players. So I really put a lot more of my effort into recruiting. And, recruiting was interesting because I had a full-time job.
Right.
So I would drive, an hour to see a kid not play. I would be there when the game was over, standing as they walked off the field, the high school team or whatever, find out how the kid did in the game, from other coaches that were there, then run into their parents and the kid on the way out and be like, hey, 2 goals today, but you missed the penalty, whatever, and then jump back in my car, you recruit it, you just did. And I think if you hear like the underdog mentality, and there's a theme here in the kind of the overachieving underdog mentality, that's the theme that kind of carries its way through everything. And you recruit kids that want to be the underdog too. That, and at Stockton, I knew there were a lot of good players out there in South Jersey. We had an arch rival. I usually don't say their name publicly, but it begins with an R, and it's about an hour from us. So they were our arch rival, and they really got most of the kids from the area. And so my theory was, we're going to do a little bit different. We're going to be they were very much the old Oakland Raiders of soccer, like the bad boys kind of thing. And they was part of their culture, and we were going to be the good guys, So I went out and recruited kids. I said, listen, you go there and you're probably going to win, but it's going to be a different experiences than it is here. And, luckily enough, a few kids chose that path. We got a couple D1 kids that, came, transferred back in the area. They had a new rule where once you left the school, if you were out of school 2 years, you're automatically eligible again. So we had a couple D1 guys that, were big time D1 guys that maybe struggled academically. And now at 23 or 24, are in the neighborhood. And, I knew them. I was still playing in the summer. So I knew all the college kids. I knew, all the men's guys and stuff. So, we were able to get a few players, D1 transfers, and a really good core of kids from, a couple of schools actually dropped their program to, drop the men's program, Illinois State being one of them. So one of their guys, from South Jersey came back and played for me. So, I realized we had to get better players, and we did. And, I have one regret, a couple of regrets. One regret is that team that I had didn't win a national championship. We were up 1-0, 5 minutes left in the whatever regional final, and to College of New Jersey, Trenton State, and we had beaten them 4-1 during the year, and we kicked their ass. And one of our kids threw a punch, got red carded. We got 2 goals in the last 5 minutes. A week later, they win the national championship, right? And I mean, we smashed them both times. So that one still sticks, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really coach after that. I tried to coach the next year. I didn't have anything left in me.
Yeah.
And so the Lafayette thing came along at the right time, to be able to make the decision, get out of IT, take the big pay cut that came with it, by the way. So,
yes.
Yeah, $50,000 pay cut, and take the $50,000 pay cut, and try to make a true career out of this, and that all worked out as well.
Today's college soccer programs receive hundreds of emails a day from players wanting one of very few spots on their roster. Jared, Zach, and I, we all use Choose It Right for our son's communication process. The platform creates a simple resume format that includes academics, club and coach info, links for pics and highlight videos, and more importantly, the platform has a database of colleges, their sizes, locations, conferences, majors, and costs to help narrow down the search. Check out the Choose It Right link in the show notes and take advantage of the SDP discount on your purchase. Back to the show. So talk a little bit about kind of that decision-making process. Then for you personally, you that last year is a frustrating year. You make the decision to ditch corporate America, but there had to be something on the other side of it. What was it that told you, that made you make the decision? I want to be a coach. I want to stay in this game. And at that time, did you have kind of a plan or a dream to go D2 to D1? You know, what was the ceiling at that time as you made the change?
No idea. And I knew, though, I had a feeling about myself that I was destined for something big. And it wasn't going to be writing air traffic control software. Okay. and breaking down ones and zeros to find out why a bit was set and why the system was crashing, and that it wasn't going to happen that way. And that would have been a torturous life for me. And so anyway, in the back of my mind, I always had an idea that something great was happening. So interestingly enough, Lafayette comes along, and the dean of students at Stockton was friends with the Lafayette administrator. I'm a long shot to get the job, the D3 guy. They were bringing in D1 assistant coaches. I'm a long shot, but gets me an interview. And, I don't know what you heard, pretty personable, guy, and pretty quick on my feet in terms of, being able to present myself. And, I was able to get the job. And, so interestingly enough, you interview with the dean of the admissions director is, one of the people you have to connect with, because now Lafayette, any school, you got to get kids into school, right?
Yep.
And at Stockton and at Lafayette, you can have one-on-one connection with the admissions director. At Northwestern, you're not allowed to have that, right? You have to go through your administrator. But there, it's about building relationships such that when they know you really need something, they can help you. Anyway, I get the job, and it was a tough decision too, because I went to school there. I had to make all these decisions, move, and I thought about it, and consulted some people, and yeah, let's go, let's do it. And so I get up there, and my first day I go and interview with the admissions director who had interviewed me, and he's like, yeah, you were my guy. You were my guy. You were the guy. I felt it. He goes, this is a 3 to 5 year for you. This is 3 to 5 years max for you. And then you move on to someplace bigger. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah. You're a hot shot. This is 3 to 5. I go, whoa. I just made like a life decision here. And you're telling me I'm out of here in 3 to 5 years. And I was there 3 years. We won the Patriot League championship. We went from 4-12 to 16-5 my first year. Again, one of the most amazing years that you can have as a coach. Same guy, five guys transferred from the year before. 3 of their senior players just decided they didn't want to play anymore. So, we probably had 12. There was 0 recruiting done. So the player, interestingly enough, the coach before me was a guy named Nelson Rodriguez, who went on to become the president of the general manager for the Chicago Fire for a while.
Yeah.
So that's who I replaced. And but there was, and it's funny, I read stuff where like, they haven't hired a coach for 4 months. They haven't hired a coach, Well, smaller schools, what they do is they don't hire a coach so they can save the salary money in their budget, because every nickel counts.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So I get the job in like March, and they hadn't had a coach since November. So there's 0 recruits. And so we just find out whoever's not committed for senior year, it's not going to be a great class, but it's going to be a class. And I need numbers because all these guys quit the team or transferred. And we had one group up. We had one weekend. It was a week after spring break. It was like the end of March. And it's Easton, Pennsylvania. So if you've ever been in Easton, Pennsylvania, it's not as cold as Chicago, but it's not Naples, Florida here. And sure enough, it's 85 degrees in Easton, Pennsylvania for the 2 days these kids are up. And because it's right after spring break, all the girls from the sororities are on the quad in their bikinis trying to keep their tan. All right. And I'm giving tours and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, it's like this all the time. Right? So again, you talk about luck. I think 10 out of the 12 kids decided to come, and 2 of them actually, became pretty good players, for us at some point. And but we had basically 12-man roster. Nobody got hurt. And my first three games we beat. We'll connect some dots here. So in 1994, I worked with the Saudi Arabian World Cup team, and at Stockton. I took a leave of absence for 10 weeks from the IT world, and the coaches were Argentinian. Okay, and they had a team come up and train from Argentina, who was Holland. Okay, so Saudi Arabia is going to play Holland in the first game, the Netherlands. So they had a team of 17, 19-year-old Argentinians who wore full orange kits every day in training, and 3-4-3. And you could look. There's Bergkamp. There's you can look at the team and know exactly what the team was, but they wore an orange kit every day. Little side note: one of the kids on the team was the coach's son, who I suggested he can come to school there and improve his English. And he does. And then Santiago Solari goes on to play Stockton Rookie of the Year and goes on to play and win the Champions League at Real Madrid. He's the only college player ever to win the Champions League, by the way.
That's awesome.
And we're still great friends now. He's the technical director of Real Madrid now.
Yeah.
So I was able to catch up with him over the summer. But anyway, fast forward to Lafayette. I get the job. I look at the schedule. The first game the next year on the schedule is Syracuse at home. So I go out and buy a bunch of orange stuff, pay for it myself. Our reserve team wears orange every day for all the spring and all the preseason. And then I do some visualization with the guys. I brought in my announcer from Stockton. To do the day before, and he's like, and we're visualizing, and then he goes, and I have him on the PA system. He goes, 10, 9, and I go, at that, I said, the ball's going to get kicked out of bounds by somebody from Syracuse, and then you're going to hear this, and he starts counting down, and I said, and at that moment, you realize we're going to be 1-0, and the guy comes on, and he's like, and the final score, Lafayette 2, Syracuse nothing. Well, the next day, I swear to God, with exactly 10 seconds left, the ball goes off the Syracuse guy's shin, and it was 2-0. And I turned to the bench. I go, you guys going to start listening to me now? Are you ready to start listening to me?
I told you to go study.
Yeah, right. I said, and we did the orange, and they were orange, and, it was just like all this, like, whatever. And sometimes it's, you give belief, and other times you just BSing and they buy into it. And that was one of the years where we had a shtick for every single game, like every single game. So my first 3 games, we shut out Syracuse, we shut out FDU, and then we shut out Villanova with Jimmy Curtin playing center midfield, by the way. So, and then we went to Delaware. Oh, we beat somebody else too. And then we went to Delaware. We're up 2-0 at Delaware. And now we think we're good. And we wind up getting countered and lose 3-2. So then we go back to this, blue collar mindset, and we won like the next 12 games or something. So it was incredible.
So let me ask you this then: you're basically laying out a story that is an atypical story. This is not kind of the cut and dry typical coach that we've spoken to. No offense to the other coaches,
Yeah, right.
but at what point, as you're going through this process, because it sounds as if the first 7 years you're still working full time, you're kind of double dipping, you're figuring out your life, you love the game, but it's not everything yet. You decide to jump into the deep end, you get this Lafayette, pseudo dream job going from the D3 school up. You come out of the gate firing on all cylinders, and then over the next 2-3 years, because you were there 3 years, it sounds as if things just kind of were happening in a fluid motion. My question is, at what point did you start to try and think about what kind of coach you wanted to be, what kind of culture you wanted in a team? Because it's this story seems super loose, a combination of passion and luck. So
right.
At what point do you start to say, okay, I now need to put my thumb on this and make this mine?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say this. I don't mean to brag. I'm a great guy. All right. I'm a great guy. I care about people. That's the number one thing. Right. And the kids know with all the jokes and the personality that you're somebody that they can count on. Okay. And that's the number one thing. And, if you talk to any of the, 11 former assistants that I have that are Division I head coaches, and then a couple of guys that are D3 that have won national championships, one of the things I always told them, and Neil Jones is one of the guys at Wisconsin. Now, Neil, we're fast forward a little bit. Neil's with me at Northwestern. I bring him in from Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara is a much different culture than Northwestern. These guys are going to be pros. They're the bad boys. They're, like they got 50 red cards, but they, they're good. And Neil comes with me, and he brings this hard-ass edge, to the kids. And we weren't buying it. And I just kind of said to him, I said, nobody cares. I said, you're a great coach, Neil. You're one of the best coaches I've ever with. But these guys don't know that you care about them. And there's an old saying, nobody cares how much you know until you know how much you care. Right? And so if you ever talk to any of my assistants, Eric Ron at Colgate, Dennis at Lafayette, they know that mantra. Okay, that's what comes first.
Mm-hmm.
All right. 2, we have this underdog mentality. Nobody expects us to win. Nobody expects us to win at Lafayette. Nobody expects us to win at Stockton. You have to recruit players that want to have that mindset. Okay. And, if you get the kids, then we start winning, people come there because you win.
Yeah.
They don't come there to help you win. They come there because you win.
Right.
And that's part of the culture and that's a historical thing. Our culture is going to be, we're the underdog. I don't care what happens. This is not supposed to happen here, right? This is not supposed to happen at Stockton. It wasn't supposed to happen at Lafayette, but we're going to find a way to make it happen. And your culture is, you got to find guys. Now, luckily, again, at Lafayette, when I got to Lafayette, again, those guys, I thought I had to come in and kick some ass. Actually, I recruited one kid from South Jersey, Italian kid. And my literally pitch to him was like, I don't know if you're good enough to play here, but I need a Luca Brazzi I need a Luca Brazzi that's going to have my back when, things start flying, when guys start fighting me, because I have to go up there and shake some things up, because they've been 4-12 2 years in a row. So he was Mike Sione from Wildwood, New Jersey, came up. He was my Luca Brazzi. I didn't need a Luca Brazzi. The kids were on board, for 100%. And some of the best guys, I've ever coached, and still close with a lot of those guys from Lafayette over that couple years. But, the culture is based on, I believe, this belief that we're not supposed to do this. But when we do it, it's going to be something magical that we're all going to talk about forever. Well, and that's pretty much the truth.
Your stories sound like a Disney movie. They sound like Miracle on Ice or
little Herb Brooks.
Yeah, Herb Brooks or it's fascinating. But Coach, I want to ask you a question about what you said about we built a culture around guys that want to believe that we can win, but that we're not supposed to. But then you created programs at Lafayette and Northwestern where you were winning, and you made a comment that said we had guys that were coming in that wanted to help us win, and then we had guys coming in because we were winning. As a recruiter, how were you able to distinguish between a player who wants to come there to help you win versus a player who wants to be there because you're winning? How were you able to figure that part out?
Yeah, and that's not a perfect science, and so I just saw this yesterday. This guy, Adam Grant, I don't know if you know Adam Grant is. Yeah, so he was at a high school, and the military guys came in to talk to the seniors about, joining the military. And so the Army guy, the Navy guy, the Air Force guy, they all do these beautiful presentations. The Air Force are playing, the Navy's playing the Top Gun, and they're, and the Army guys, be all you can be. And so all these 5-minute beautiful presentations, lots of money put in. The Marine guy gets up there and looks out and goes, I don't think anybody here is good enough. Because to be a Marine, you got to be really something. It's really hard. And I'm not sure anybody here is capable of that. But if anybody thinks they can wants to prove me wrong, I'll be in the back. So I tried to I didn't promise starting jobs. you know, even when I first got there, I mean, at Northwestern, but you didn't promise. I said, anybody promise you a starting job? Santiago Solari, I promised them a starting job. Okay, I'll take that. All right, at E3, the guy who, you know, started for Real Madrid in the Champions League, he was going to start. Okay, so, but mostly we sold how hard it's going to be, how tough it's going to be. You know, we have to play a different way. We're not going to have, you know, 8 MLS guys in the starting lineup. You know, we have to do it a different way. And unless you embrace that way, the grind, you know, we're going to score some goals, but we're going to defend first, and we're going to work hard defensively. And, you know, I used to love kids that came in and, like, you know, what's your style play? I go, you know, we play on the counterattack, because I really like the way Barcelona plays. And I go, this is 15 years ago. I go, I really like the way Barcelona plays too. I said, sit right here. And I'd spin around. I go on my computer and I bring up my roster. I go, you know what? Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets are not on our roster. So therefore, we have to play a different way than Barcelona. And by the way, just so you know, I followed Real Madrid all these years and did studies and presentations on them because I had some inside juice. They never press. And they rarely, I mean, they possess the ball a little bit. In the final third, they'll possess it, but they play on the counter.
Right. Yeah.
You know? And historically, they have, right? Played on the counter, whereas Barcelona's tiki-taka, Real Madrid's like, let's go.
Yeah,
who's got 15 championships, right?
Yeah.
As a lifelong Chelsea fanatic, I get it. Park the bus, fill the trophy case. That's your job.
I worked with Flamengo this summer, right? And they were awesome, right? They trained at Stockton. I was with them for 60 days. I went to I was with them for the games, and then, with FIFA. And this is a little side note, but anyway, I went to the game when they played Bayern Munich, and you could see they don't have their A game in the first. I'm like, play long until you figure it out. And I talked to Solari afterwards because he's down in Miami with Real Madrid, so we talk about this. He goes, I said, you got to play first 15 minutes, just play conservatively. He's like, no, Tim. He goes, you play conservative as long as you need to.
Right.
Sometimes it's 15 minutes. It might be a half. It might be 75 minutes. But they were down 2-0 in 8 minutes, right? So Real Madrid goes and plays PSG. Xabi Alonso's a first-year coach. He comes out in a 3-4-3 against PSG because Mbappe's healthy now. And they're down 3-0 in 18 minutes, right? Because PSG's press is like crazy. Like you can't, and I watch it all the time in youth soccer. You can't beat the press, but you still try to beat the press. You're losing 5-0. You know what I mean?
Right.
At some point, just kick the ball long.
Yeah.
And Chelsea comes out against PSG, plays 3 long balls, and they win 3. Right. So that's what you have to do sometimes.
Right.
Anyway, I got off on a tangent here. But,
No, that's a tangent that JB, first of all, is loving.
Yeah, because I'm
you're
fully
validating.
aware.
You're validating
I'm fully aware
everything
of my
he's
boy.
said for the last God knows how long. But
right.
Yeah, nobody cares about XG if you lose.
I'm with you. I have not ever argued for XG.
We always have this debate on the show, style, right?
Yeah.
Everybody does it, and frankly, with the popularity of the game and the quality of the teams across multiple leagues, the fandom has grown. So now everybody's breaking this down into, are you tiki-taki Barca guy, or are you Munich, up the wings, whatever it is. And at the end of the day, I love how you approach this because I think back to my own high school days. Growing up and playing where we did, we had very, very good teams, but we all knew that of the 22 kids on the roster, there was only 3 or 4 of us that were actual soccer players. And then there was a whole load of grit role players that were super athletes that could take instruction. And then there was character guys that kind of tied it all together, right?
Right.
And it sounds like you led with personality, you led with kind of your own personal culture, and you've said a couple of times that you wanted somebody that believed that had a chip on their shoulder, that had something to prove. And this transitions into what I think is you going from Lafayette to Northwestern. Because if you're going to your next gig and it's a high-profile Division I program,
Big Ten,
in the Big Ten, with Indiana, with Michigan State, with all these blue bloods, did that go into the mindset or into your process in looking for the next thing? Because the AD or whoever hired you said, look, you got 3 years, then you're out of here. You're out on the 3-year mark. What was your plan, and how did you land at Northwestern?
Well, yeah, I don't know that I was the first choice at Northwestern. I think, there were probably, I knew they interviewed, again, Division I assistants from high profile programs. One coach, interesting story, Mike Noonan interviewed for the job because Jerry Yeagley's very close with Jerry. Jerry, he was contacted by people at Northwestern, and Mike turned the job down. But I knew Mike because my Lafayette teams had played Brown, and he said, the guy you want to hire is, Tim Lenahan. He probably calls me Timmy, maybe Timmy Lenahan. You got to hire Timmy Lenahan. That's the guy that. So they did call me. I don't know if anybody else besides Mike turned it down, but they had one game and they were 0-17-1, right?
Right.
And now the two places I had taken over, I came in, told the jokes and had the mindset and all that stuff. And we had success. We went from 2-15 and 9-5. We went from 4-12 to 16-5, and won the championship in the Patriot League, and set the record for most wins in the history of the league, right out of the chute. And, but now we're not playing, you can't go and sit in a 4-4-2 against Indiana with no athleticism and no talent and survive, right? But, we were able to change a few things. One, they had led the league in fouls, I think, Northwestern, and yellow cards, right? So that's a no-no for me because we don't foul and we don't give up unnecessary yellow cards. Like dissent yellow cards are just stupid. And I've done presentations on, I call it the Lenahan Fair Play Rating System, where if you break down fouls, it's fouls plus 10 times yellows plus 25 times red divided by games played. You get the lowest number out of that. If you sort that, you'll see the best teams. I did it just randomly, and I think 14 of the top 20 made the NCAA tournament, and only one team in the bottom 20 made the NCAA tournament. That was Santa Barbara. It was the outlier, and that was their thing. But we were going to not give up fouls. We're not going to give up yellow cards for being idiots. And you got to, the idiot correction is a big part when your culture, you're just and the other thing was, we can suck because we're smart. You know what I mean? And that was a big thing at Northwestern culturally at that time too, across many sports, right? Mm-hmm. Football.
I think Vanderbilt had the same mentality in the SEC for a long time until recently.
That's all right. That's okay. You're going to work for us someday.
Yeah.
That's the football chant, right? And so culturally, you have to change that mindset. But that's when I really found out that from a talent standpoint, we were not even a division. And I brought all the kids in, and they were nice kids. And I said, what schools were you looking at before you chose Northwestern? Well, it was here, Emory, or Wash U. Okay, great. Well, it was here, Carnegie Mellon. So it was all D3s, right? And, the guy nice man, knew his soccer, but, didn't understand, the game had changed from the, whatever. And so now we had to get players, right? We had to get some players. So the first year, I just had to get a number of players. I didn't go try to recruit the best players because it wasn't fair for the best players to come there. We weren't good enough yet, right? And it was going to be a little bit of a process here. But we brought in a number of good players that could help us at least start to move the needle a little bit. And my first year, we won our very last game. So that ended a 35-game winless streak. We
Oh
went
my
one
God.
13 and we went 1-13-3, and we won our last game because I rescheduled. It was 2001. I rescheduled a game from 9/11 that had gotten canceled, and I rescheduled it the day of the Big Ten championship. All right, so we go up to Wisconsin, lose to Penn State. Played really well. Actually, we kind of surprised them because I pressed and went after them for like the first 45 minutes, and they were expecting us to sit in. And a kid named Chad Severs that played for them scored 2 great goals. Chad grew up a block from me in Ocean City, New Jersey, actually. So it's kind of funny. Anyway, but we rescheduled this game at Valparaiso. It's a rescheduled game, so I don't know if they contacted grounds crew because the field was aerated.
Oh,
So
God.
between the
Oh,
goose
little
shit
nuggets.
and,
Yeah.
the goose shit and the aeration is just little nuggets all over the field. So we score a goal. We're hanging on. We play a ball back to our goalkeeper. Hits one of these nuggets, goes over his leg, rolls in the goal, and a guy clears it off the line. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, we might actually. So we win 1-0. Gatorade dump, right? Gatorade dump from the guys. 35 games without a win, right? 35 games without a win. And then the next year, we got some kids in. We went 8-12, but we still went 0-6 in the Big Ten. And then the next year, we got some really good players in, and we went 0-3-3 in the Big Ten. But we beat Michigan, who went to the Elite Eight in the Big Ten tournament that year. And that was and we beat Duke. We beat Duke during the season at Duke. And what's really special about that game is when you're building a program rather than just a team, is I wasn't at the Duke game because my mom had died. And I had forgotten about the game, by the way, as you do. And Eric Ronning, who's the head coach at Colgate, and just a great coach, great guys, won 6 championships up there, by the way, calls me, and then I remember, oh, shit, we had a game that day, I was picking up flowers, or something. It's just, the loss and the grief, you're just in another planet. And he goes, I'm choked up telling you, sorry, just, Coach, final score, Duke 1, Northwestern 2.
Quite the gift.
The boys did it for you, Coach, and that's when I'm getting all choked up.
Well,
That's when you have something.
Yeah.
let's talk about the kids, because you go in there. There's this incredibly insane winless streak. You break that. You talk about kind of polling the players about their alternatives, which is really the writing on the wall. You knew you were going to go to market. You had to rebuild it. So what were you looking for? Was this really an extension of what you would have already experienced previously at your first 2 schools, or because of the stage and the conference and the scale, did you shift your mindset at all, and where were you looking for these early players to turn the program around?
Well, first of all, we only have 5 scholarships instead of 10.
Oh, wow.
So let me throw that in there. Okay.
Yeah.
It's twice as hard to get in, and it costs twice as much. All right. But because of Lafayette had 0 scholarships, they have scholarships now. I knew how to need-based recruit. And that's where you go and you look at their financial aid. They didn't have Zillow back then, but when Zillow came out, because I could see how much everybody's house cost, right? And you could see if they're in a $150,000 rancher or a $2.7 million house in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
Well, if that kid's going to bitch about how much scholarship he's getting, that's not the kid you want. You know what I mean? Because I know your parents have the money. So if you want to go to, SMU because, they're giving you more money, then go to SMU. But I can get you into school, which you can't get into Northwestern. It's like one of those impossible schools to get in on your own. Like the kids that get into Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Duke, Stanford, Northwestern on their own, that's a different animal than the athletes, but you have a little leeway with the athletes. So, Brad Napper, a kid from Dallas, Texas, was one of our big recruits. Yarrow, Polipchek, who was from the Sockers, which was important for us to start to establish, in those Chicago clubs. Those are two central defenders that we started with. And then you get a California kid and I think I brought in 14 the first year. I think I wound up with 10 of them, by the time that was open. Now, the kids that started who were freshmen my first year there, I think we had 8 players. Only 2 of them made it through. And most of them quit. Nobody, they just quit because they weren't playing and they thought it's because I was a terrible person. They would, and they, back then they could join a frat, they joined a frat and whatever. So, but then the next year, Gerardo Alvarez, Dan Keeler, we were really brought in some good at it. The first year we focused on defense. The next year, we brought in the attacking players. And then 2004, we brought in this little 120-pound left-footed kid who the big schools didn't want, who was just magical, by the name of Dave Roth, right? Dave Roth from St. Louis, right?
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Know the name.
Dave was a magical player, and his personality was just unbelievable, right? So now we have a team, right? But it's still not supposed to happen, and that's still the mindset. So you're trying to recruit like the Marines did by telling them this is going to be hard. Don't come here if you don't want to embrace the hard, right? We're not going to have the ball the whole time. We had a kid, Gerardo Alvarez, that put us over the top. Now, unfortunately, he led the Big Ten in scoring his sophomore year. And then, unfortunately, his knees went. Otherwise, it's a shame. He'll never be in the Hall of Fame, but he's the most important person in Northwestern soccer history, to be honest with you. 12 goals, 9 assists. Rookie of the year his freshman year, 12 goals, 9 assists as a sophomore. We make the NCAA tournament. We go to the Big Ten championship, right? And Gerardo's Superman. Like, he's just full of Argentinian swagger, And again, we're tying all the worlds together here. He was struggling his first year scoring. So we're going to go play Green Bay. So I make a phone call. I give it to Gerardo, who's Argentinian. So there's one of his favorite players that played at River Plate is now at Real Madrid. So on the bus, Santiago Solari gives him a little pep talk in Spanish.
There you go.
And he scores 2 goals that night. And then, became Rookie of the Year. Next year he was Superman. And but we had a team, And again, we played 4-5-1 only because it fit. Nobody was playing 4-5-1 then,
Right.
And we played 4-5-1 because I had a true number 9. I had these wingers, Dave Roth, and then I had Gerardo who could sit in the 10, like Raquelme, it didn't have to demand too much of him in terms of he was so good. I didn't want to have to waste all his time defending. And then we found the other guys to kind of fit in around him. And, we led the Big Ten in scoring that year. We gave up too many goals, but we scored 50-some goals that year.
Jeez.
And, one of the big, just a real quick story. We hadn't won a Big Ten game still, a regular season game. Like 27 games or something like that. So we played Penn State, and we're on the ascent. We're legit. We're a real team, and we kicked their ass. I mean, we outshot them like kind of 13-3 or something like that. It's 2-0. The announcers, 1 minute left in regulation. Guys are hugging each other. Going to win our first Big Ten game in 7 years. We gave up 2 goals in the last 40 seconds. And they were out of nothing. It wasn't like we were sustained pressure. 2 fluke plays. I told the guy to kick the ball out of bounds in the corner on the kickoff after they scored the first one and then go press. So they couldn't get out. It would take them a long time to get out. Well, he's left-footed, so he plays a ball down the left sideline with his left foot, and it curls along the touchline and stays in bounds. So the goalie sprints over, dribbles it out, plays one in the box, rattle, rattle, rattle. Chad Severs, the same kid who grew up, scores on a diving header with 9 seconds left. Now we got to defend for 20 minutes, and we're rattled down. They're just all over us. And when that second goal scored, the blood just rushed out of my body. Like, we're never ever going to win a Big Ten game. And our next Big Ten game is Indiana at Indiana, who was the defending national and eventual national champions. We score 6 minutes in. This pregame speech I gave beforehand, I wrote all these numbers on the board: 55, 39, 28, 22, 0. 55 games in the Big Ten since Indiana lost. X. 39 games since they lost at home. X. 28 since we won in the Big Ten. And all time against Indiana and Northwestern was 0, 22, and 0. And I wrote 0, and then I wrote 26 or 28 or something. I go, that's what these numbers are going to be after today? I said, but this is the most important number.
Yeah.
Anybody know what that number is? No. That's the number of people on this planet that think we're going to win today.
Right.
I said, luckily, they're all in this room.
Yeah.
Let's go. So we score a goal, 6 minutes in, we get to halftime, guys are fired up. I said, you want the real deal? You want coach bullshit, or do you want the real deal? To give us the real deal. I said, we're about to get pounded this half. We're going to get pounded. As Yamamoto said from the Japanese army after Pearl Harbor, we've awakened the sleeping giant. They're getting their ass chewed out right now. We're going to get pounded. But unlike last week, we're not giving up a goal today. And Brian Flocken on their team, who's actually the Army coach now, cut in from like 30 yards out and just smashed one. And that's all. It hit the crossbar so hard it knocked it back and the ball deflected. But we count down and we win the game. And it's one of the few times I didn't shake the coach's hand because I was so stunned. And Mike Freitag, it was right after Jerry had retired. And Mike won the national championship that year out of St. Louis. Mike taps me on my shoulder. It's like, good game. I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah. Like, we just beat. Well, our first win is Indiana at Indiana. Who was not only the defending national champion, became the national champion that year. So that's a memory that I'll take with me forever.
Can you shift just briefly into, because over the 20 years that you were at Northwestern, I'll call that really from that 2000, 2001, the early 2000s in general, to now, it's been an absolute renaissance of soccer in America. The growth of clubs, the growth of television, the popularity for, the next gen, every group of grade schoolers, you can see them running around with their Messi kits or whatever it is. And I'm really curious how you look back and view your relationship to the players, the quality of the players, your recruiting style, because early 2000s, there's talent everywhere, but then here comes the DA. Then here comes, the MLS academies are growing at a faster pace. You being in Chicago, the Chicago Sockers, and just up the road, Bavaria, and a lot of the local clubs, and obviously just head straight down 55. There's Gallagher and the rest of our clubs down here. Can you take a second to just talk about what you see as the difference in the players, maybe the quality of the players or the mindset of the players, or kind of the expansive nature of where they're all at?
Yeah, technically it's night and day, okay? And, technically the players today compared to, 20 years ago, you had a few technical players. Obviously your special players, Gerardo Alvarez, David Roth, they were technical. But I think one of the things, and I joke with some of the guys that, played years, I said, of course they're more technical. I go, look at the fields we played on. Like, look at the fields we played on. I said, maybe it wasn't technical because the ball wasn't hitting my foot. It was hitting my shin half the time, on a 10-yard pass because it was hitting, concrete or whatever was left over from whatever. Like, we all play on those fields, right? And so, obviously, the quality of the surfaces everybody plays on are great. The coaching is, the technical development and how they teach, skills, night and day, right? Mm-hmm. Night and day from where it was. So, I think technically, the players, it's night and day. The special players, though, the ones that see things. Like, I can't see what I can't coach Gerardo Alvarez. I couldn't coach Dave Roth. in telling them what choices they should make with the ball, because they can see things that I can see on videotape, but I can't see it when it's happening. And you have to allow those players a little bit of freedom and work the rest of the group to cover up any of their weaknesses. And that's, there's piano movers and there's piano players, right? And that's what you talk about your high school team.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a piano player, you got to let them, you just don't give them the sheet music and tell them you got to do this, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're getting away from some things.